Oh, today we have something special for you. 2 aircraft in one episode, and we take a trip down memory lane and look at the original Buzz. Hello and welcome to a new episode of Review where we have a Avro 100 of Buzz. Here we have the box, we have the image of the aircraft in real life at the front and top of the box. We have the Buzz branding. On the back side of the box we then have the image of the aircraft once again. We are also given the original dimensions and some additional information. Then we have the second aircraft in this episode, which is a 737-300 of Buzz. Here again we have the lovely image of the aircraft in real life at the front of the box. We also have the Buzz branding on top of the box. Again, on the back side of the box we have a lovely image of the aircraft. We are given the original dimensions of the aircraft and some additional information. So that's all for the 2 boxes. Now let's take a closer look at the models. And we start off with the Avro RJ100 of Buzz here in their standard livery. However, it did deviate a little bit from the standard livery that we see on the other model, because here in this aircraft we have a grey belly, just for your information. Then here at the back side of the aircraft we have the lovely Buzz branding on the vertical stabilizer. On the fuselage we then again have the writing of Buzz, and we have the full registration code of the aircraft. If we move to the front of the aircraft, we then have across the fuselage at the front, a little bit smaller, again the writing Buzz. I do quite like the shape of the mold here for the cockpit section. As I've mentioned in a previous review, Herpa has struggled a little bit over the years with the Avro jets or the shape of the Avro jets, but I think here they have done rather well. Also the placement of the cockpit windows is quite okay. The engine nacelles, really lovely with this dark blue and the light green writing of Buzz. I think that looks really nice. The backside of the engine nacelles looks also really awesome. However, if we look into the engines from the front, unfortunately this is still one of the early generations of the Avro models from Herpa Wings where they still had no detailing inside the engine, so no engine fan blades in this case. Alright, so before we continue with the Avro RJ100 of Buzz, let's take a quick look at the 737-300 of Buzz here again in their standard livery, but as we can see here with an entirely yellow fuselage. If these liveries were introduced at a slightly different time, I'm not entirely sure about. If you know more about that, then please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. Alright, so at the back of the aircraft we find the Buzz branding on the vertical stabilizer. We can have the writing of Buzz on the fuselage and the full registration code of the aircraft. At the front of the aircraft across the fuselage, again the writing of Buzz, however in a little bit smaller font. Now, this model is the very first version of the new generation aircraft from Herpa Wings, and honestly speaking, I don't think the mold for the 737 was ideal at the time. I don't particularly like the shape, especially around the cockpit section. But hey, it is a very old model, so I won't really fault the model. What I quite like is, of course, the addition that we have just above the normal cockpit windows. These are actually additional cockpit windows. And then I should also quickly mention that we also have the last 2 letters of the registration code above the cockpit windows twice. Also in this case, the engine nacelles have been given this really lovely dark blue color, giving a really lovely contrast to the yellow fuselage, and again with the writing of Buzz. If we look at them from the backside, I think they look rather decent. And also if we look at the engines from the front, we can see very nicely the engine fan blades here. In this case they have been added, so that's obviously very nice. If we look at the fuselage just above the wings, we can also see we have the emergency exit printed on. And then we have, of course, also a little bit of time to take a look at the wings. Here on the top side of the wings we have all the different flaps, slats and spoilers carved out very nicely. We do also have a little bit of different shades of grey for additional detailing. The underside of the wings I think also looks rather decent, where we also have the full registration code of the aircraft once again. If we then quickly look at the main landing gear underneath the wings here, I mean, I'm not quite sure what Herpa was thinking with that, but these wheels are enormous compared to the aircraft, way too bulky. From the side it's not as terrible, but from the front it's really not nice. What is nice, however, is that they have added the doors to the cargo compartments printed on here on the back side of the aircraft and here at the front of the aircraft. So with that, let's jump back to the Avro jet and see what the wings look like. If we look at the top side, we can see the different flaps, slats and spoilers. Okay, again, here maybe this could be a little bit more detailed, but again, it's a very old model, so it's not too bad. The underside, that is a little bit lackluster in my opinion, even for an old model, but we do have the full registration code of the aircraft once again. What we also have to be a little bit lenient with this model is the landing gear. I mean, if we judge it from today's standard, it's maybe a bit basic, but overall it's actually not too bad, especially the main landing gear. The front landing gear, very basic, but it does its job and is surprisingly sturdy. And then a pleasant surprise here at the end of the episode. The model does have doors to the cargo compartments printed on here in the backside of the aircraft and here at the front of the aircraft. If you remember, in the last review I did of an Avro jet, that still didn't have any doors to the cargo compartments, so this is definitely a plus. So there we have it, the Avro RJ100 and the Boeing 737-300 of Buzz. But what is Buzz? And why does the airline kind of still exist even though it has been gone for many years? The airline was in its original form established in 1999 by KLM as a sub-brand of KLM UK and was to compete with other low-cost carriers such as EasyJet, Go and Ryanair by taking over many of the point-to-point routes of the former Air UK KLM UK network. In 2003, KLM announced that it would sell the airline to Ryanair, which continued to operate the airline after restructuring Buzz. However, by the end of 2004, the airline and brand name was abandoned and all operations fully absorbed by Ryanair. In 2019, Ryanair announced that they would revive the Buzz brand as the new name for Poland-based Ryanair Sun. However, so far those aircraft are flying in full Ryanair colors and are only distinguishable from the other Ryanair planes by their Polish registration. So that's all we can say about the airline, but what can we say about the models? Well, I mean, the Avro RJ100 is definitely my favorite. I really like that they have this grey belly. I think that just adds a little bit to the livery. Obviously the missing engines, or the engine fan blades I should rather say, is obviously not great, but other than that the model is actually really nice and not far from what we could get from Herpa Wings today. The 737 is a different story. I mean, that is probably only a model you would get if you really like the airline or have fond memories of it, because the mold, honestly speaking, is not that great. It is the first version of the new generation aircraft models from Herpa Wings, so again, all these things are forgivable. So honestly speaking, I can only recommend the 737 if you really have a specific connection to the airline or trying to do some historic recreations, as I'm, for example, doing with my series Cardiff. Other than that, I would say, yeah, sure, the Avro jet is great, the 737 not so much. But with that, we are coming to the end of today's episode. Today a little bit different than usual with 2 aircraft models in one episode. But if you have enjoyed this, then feel free to leave a like. That would be very much appreciated. And of course, if you are new around here, why not hit subscribe? That would be absolutely awesome. With that, I'd like to say thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out. And bye.